The last learning objective in section 1.3 is also about bias. In this learning objective, we want you to explain how bias could be affecting the results of a study. The first example here says, an online newspaper conducted a survey by asking visitors to their website to mark either yes or no to the question, do you support the lowering of air quality standards if it could cause the death of millions of innocent people from pollution-related diseases? Explain why any conclusions drawn should not be considered valid. Well, there are two sources of bias in this example. The first is sampling bias because this is a voluntary response sample or a voluntary response survey in which the question was just put out there online, and so there was no random selection of the individuals. We have no way of knowing who had the opportunity to answer this survey question and chose not to versus who never had the opportunity to answer the question. In a voluntary response sample, the individuals who respond are generally those who feel more strongly about the issue, and so they're the ones who bother to respond. The second issue here is that there is also response bias because of the wording of the question. It's worded in a way that most people would answer no. They would not support the death of millions of innocent people for whatever reason. And so this is an example where the types of responses that we get are more likely to be no. So the proportion that we would see would be higher for the no category than we might see if this were not a voluntary response sample and if the question were worded in an unbiased way. So I'm going to just add that explanation in here so that you can read it on your own as you are reviewing this video. Okay, here's the next example. An environmental science teacher at a high school with a large population of students wanted to estimate the proportion of students at the school who regularly recycle plastic bottles. The teacher selected a random sample of students at the school to survey. Each selected student went into the teacher's classroom one at a time and was asked to respond yes or no to the question, do you regularly recycle plastic bottles? Explain how bias might have been introduced and describe how the bias might affect the point estimate of the proportion of all students at the school who would respond yes to the question. This is an environmental science teacher. Likely, the teacher is encouraging recycling. And so if students are coming in and being asked face-to-face by their teacher, it's clearly not anonymous or confidential, and the students likely know what answer the teacher would like to see. And so therefore, they are more likely to answer yes. Now, the question isn't worded in a biased way, but because students know who is asking them the question, they are more likely to answer yes, which means that the proportion who would answer yes is going to be higher than we would normally expect. So there's the explanation for that question there. So no, not only the sources of bias, but also how that bias could affect the results of a study.